A very good afternoon to everybody present here today for the online national seminar on exploring diverse perspectives on eco-criticism in the Anthropocene, culture, literature, and environmental consciousness. We begin with our day 2. Before beginning our seminar, I would like to introduce our resource person for today, that is Dr. Rajeshri. A brief introduction about ma'am. Dr. Rajeshri is at present Assistant Professor of English at Cotton University. And now I would give you a brief introduction about the topic that she will be talking about. Her title is Climate Refugees of the Anthropocene, reading Moria Hula as Cli-Fi. Dr. Rajeshri has received her doctorate on Anglophone poetry from Northeast India from Indian Institute of Technology in 2008. Currently, she teaches in the Department of English, Cotton University, Guwahati, India. Previously, she taught at a MA program in English in Yongphula Sanitary College of the Royal Bhutan University. Her current areas of interest are Eastern Himalayan literature and culture, disability studies, anonymity studies, urban ecology, food studies, climate fiction, and the literature of the Anthropocene. She is currently engaged in editing a volume of scholarly essays, tentatively titled Eastern Himalayas and the Border, Thinking in the Post-COVID-19 World, to be published by Routledge. India, as a part of her proposed Routledge book series, Academia, Politics and Society in the Post-COVID World. Welcome, ma'am. With that glorious achievements that you have received, I welcome you for today's event, and the stage is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karishma. Yeah, actually, I think there was a printing error in the poster, and I was really worried because the spelling of the term Cli-Fi as it appeared in the poster, I think there was a bit of an error, and I thought there might be some confusion regarding that. So since you have pronounced it in the right way, you have read it in the right way, so I think that clarifies my topic for the audience. Before proceeding with my presentation, there is one more thing that I felt I need to mention right at the beginning, which is that the area on which my paper is based, this is an area that I have also recently begun exploring, and my paper is quite rudimentary at this point, and the audience might feel that it lacks that kind of a critical and theoretical rigor. That's because I have just recently begun exploring it. So any kind of feedback and any kind of comments in this regard will be very welcome. In fact, that is what actually I'm looking for through this presentation. So I shall begin. My topic is Refugees of the Anthropocene, reading Moria Hula as Cli-Fi. By the end of the 20th century, the scientific community had begun to make shocking discoveries regarding the anthropogenic impact on the planet's environment. A study had found that 1/3 to half of the Earth's land surface had been completely transformed through human action. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased threefold since the Industrial Revolution began in Europe. More nitrogen is produced through human activity than by the totality of all other organisms. More than half of the fresh water has been exploited for human use, and 1/4 of the planet's bird species have been rendered extinct. Similar disturbing revelations have also been made by Paul Crutzen. He's an atmospheric chemist and winner of the 1995 Nobel Prize for his work on the Earth's ozone layer. And he is also credited with having popularized the term Anthropocene to describe the current geological age. In his highly influential paper published in Nature, Crutzen claims that humans have exploited to 30 to 50% of the planet's Earth's land surface. Energy use has increased by 16-fold during the last century, and the total amount of nitrogen fertilizer applied in agriculture is more than the nitrogen produced by all terrestrial organisms combined. Given this deep level of impact on the human population on the Earth's geology and ecosphere, Crutzen calls for the naming of the current geological epoch as the Anthropocene, literally the age of the humans. Here, anthropo has been taken from the Greek anthropos in recognition of the human dominance of the earth because it means human, and the part scene from the Greek root kainos, meaning new or recent. The term was first used by the biologist Eugene Stoermer and was already in informal usage in the 1970s, but it gained popularity after Crutzen began advocating for a formal renaming of the geological era following the Holocene. The Anthropocene Working Group, or AWG, an interdisciplinary group of scientists mandated by the International Commission on Stratigraphy, the ICS, was established in 2009 to study the formalization of the Anthropocene as a possible unit of geological epoch division. This process of renaming the current geological epoch is under review by the ICS, which is also trying to determine the start dates for the era. Suggestions for the same include the beginning of the Neolithic agricultural revolution some 12,000 to 15,000 years ago, James Watt's discovery of the steam engine in 1784, which is effectively the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the Orbis spike of 1610, the start of the nuclear age in 1945, and the bomb spike of 1964. An alternative proposal of considering the Anthropocene as a geological event and not an epoch has also been presented. As of July 2022, neither the ICS nor the International Union of Geological Sciences has officially approved the term as a recognized subdivision of geologic time. While debates and deliberations continue among the scientists over the question of determining and defining the Anthropocene as a chronostratigraphic unit, the concept itself has become popular and fundamental to scholarship in environmental humanities for rethinking the relationship between humans, nature, and climate. However, the term Anthropocene has also sparked discontent owing to its anthropocentric overtones and alternative names such as Capitalocene, the Plantationocene, the Cthulhucene, the Oliganthropocene, the Homogenocene, and even Plastocene have been proposed. One of the most important aspects of the Anthropocene is climate change and global warming, and they have come to be recognized since the late 20th century as one of the greatest threats for the planet. A new form of fiction, now popularly known by the term climate fiction, or in short, cli-fi, first coined by the American blogger Denny Bloom in 2007, is one of the responses to the Anthropocene and the horrors of anthropogenic climate change within the literary world. The term has quickly gained popularity and come to be adopted by libraries, bookshops, journalists, and academicians. However, there is still a lack of a coherent definition of the fiction form, as its various users use the term cli-fi while referring to works with varying characteristics of genre, style, plot, form, medium, and theme. Yet this broad range of works are distinguished by a thematic concern with anthropogenic climate and their social, political, and ethical dimensions. Goodbody and John Sputra have described climate fiction as, I quote, a distinctive body of cultural work which engages with anthropogenic climate change, exploring the phenomenon not just in terms of setting, but with regard to psychological and social issues, combining fictional plots with meteorological facts, speculation on the future, and reflection on the human-nature relationship with an open border to the wider archive of related work on whose models it sometimes draws for the depiction of climate crisis, unquote. These standard academic definitions of cli-fi insist on the speculative, futuristic, and apocalyptic element as an essential feature of climate fiction. However, many literary and popular texts do engage with the horrors of climate disasters without really being speculative or fantastic in nature. At the beginning of The Great Derangement, Amitabh Ghosh laments the lack of attention to the prospect of catastrophic climate change in what he calls serious fiction and serious literary journals. The mere mention, he says, of abrupt climate change is often enough, I quote this part, is often enough to relegate a novel or short story to the genre of science fiction, as though in the literary imagination, climate change were somehow akin to extraterrestrials or interplanetary travel. And yet, current attempts to define climate fiction using the restrictive parameters of fantasy and the speculative consign this category of works to just another species of genre fiction, reflecting the very objections which were raised by Ghosh in 2016. I come to the text under discussion today, which is Moria Hula by Joyanta Matha Bora. This was first published in book form in 2012, although it before appearing in the book form, it appeared episodically on the pages of the Hathori. This is an eminent Assamese literary journal. Only in 2012, it was compiled into book form. It was well loved by readers in both formats, and it was a winner of the Sahitya Academy Award for 2017. And it's a longish novel. This is the novel, you can see that. It's quite a tome. So this novel is based upon the unfortunate struggles of a group of villagers hailing from the Moria-Hula area of Assam, which got gradually submerged by the Brahmaputra as a result of continuous erosion of the riverbanks, which intensified since the middle of the last century. Although not historical in nature, the novel is an epic narration of the lived experiences of a group of villagers from the Moria-Hula area who lost their homes and their land due to gradual erosion of the Brahmaputra riverbank. The land area of Moria-Hula was a part of the Golaghat district in eastern Assam after it was carved out of the larger Sibsagar district in 1987. The river Brahmaputra forms the entire northern border of the district and forms one of the most erosion-prone areas along the river. Moria-Hula was a part of the Bukakhat subdivision, which is also home to the Kaziranga National Park on its westernmost extreme. The park itself lies along the southern bank of the river and has a border of about 53 kilometers along the riverbank. Riverbank erosion poses a serious threat to the park and its non-human inhabitants. The park has been losing its land to erosion at the rates of 1.46, 1.59, and 1.021 square kilometers per year during the periods 1912 to 1916, 1970 to 1998, 1998 to 2008, respectively. During this entire period of study, the erosion on the whole was 150 square kilometers, and there was also accretion due to sediment deposition, and the overall amount of accretion was 61.86 square kilometer, resulting in a loss of about 88.18 square kilometers area of the park. And this is only this data only covers the period till 2008. And this erosion is an ongoing phenomenon. At this point, I felt it is necessary to have more detailed discussion of the Brahmaputra River and the nature of erosion along its channel. So please bear with me while I take you through a lot of facts, figures, and evidentiary detail. We shall return to a discussion of the novel in question quite shortly. With a total land area of 71,516 square kilometer, the Brahmaputra Valley is home to more than 27,000 people. This is according to the 2011 census. Brahmaputra is a transboundary river. It originates in the Angsi Glacier near the Mansarovar in the Kailash range of the Himalayas in the Burang County of southern Tibet. It initially flows eastward through the length of Tibet for nearly 1,100 kilometers, where it is known as the Yarlung Sangpo. It then suddenly turns south and enters the Indian territory through a deep gorge at the village of Geling in Arunachal Pradesh, continuing to flow through the state for another 278 kilometers, mostly through the Himalayas, where it is known as the Siang or the Dibang. The Dibang debouches into the plains of Assam at this place known as Pasighat into a low-lying basin. Flowing in a southwesterly direction, 52 kilometers downstream from Pasighat, at a place known as Kobo in Assam, the Dibang is joined by two other large mountain rivers. These are the Lohit and the Dibang rivers. And from this point, it is known as the Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra then flows through the entire length of Assam in a westerly direction for about 670 kilometers, receiving 103 tributaries during this course. With this well-knit network of tributaries, the Brahmaputra controls the geomorphic regime of entire Northeast India and also the neighboring countries. It follows a wide channel, which reaches up to 20 kilometers at certain points of its flow through the Assam plains. It acquires a braided character during its flow across the plains, creating several mid-channel banks and islands. Between the Dibrugarh and Lakhimpur districts, the river divides into two channels, the northern Kherkutia channel and the southern Brahmaputra channel. The two channels join again about 100 kilometers downstream, forming the Majuli Island, which is the largest inhabited river island in the world. The Brahmaputra turns south after the town of Dhubri in the westernmost part of Assam and enters Bangladesh, where it is known as the Jamuna. It merges with the Padma, known as Ganga in India, after which the river is known as the Meghna and ultimately drains into the Bay of Bengal, forming the Ganga-Brahmaputra Delta, which is one of the largest river deltas of the world. So in totality, the Brahmaputra travels for about 3,969 kilometers. and it forms the 15th longest river in the world, and it ranks 9th in terms of average water discharge at the mouth. It is also the second in the world in terms of sediment transport per unit of discharge. The braided course of the Brahmaputra through the Assam plains that I had mentioned is characterized by a critical erosion problem. A uniquely dynamic river that Brahmaputra is, both erosion and deposition are continuous processes in an attempt to reach a new equilibrium in channel geometry and morphology. Significant stretches of prime inhabited land are lost every year due to erosion of the Brahmaputra riverbank. Recurrent erosion has caused irreparable damage to many important places along the riverbank, in addition to the permanent loss of cultivable and homestead lands. Total area of erosion and deposition, I have lots of figures. Between 1973 to 2014 was 1,557 and 204 square kilometers respectively. Between 1990 to 2008 in the North Bank and South Bank of the Brahmaputra, the erosion levels were 544 and 920 square kilometers respectively. This erosion phenomenon is again most critical on the Brahmaputra River channel for a stretch of about 270 kilometers from the Panidihing Reserve Forest to Halokonda Bill, which lies somewhere around the Kaziranga Reserve Forest, which covers, and this area covers the Majuli River Island and the Kaziranga Wildlife Sanctuary. While the latter is a World Heritage Site of the UNESCO, that is Kaziranga, and the other, the Majuli Island, this is also in a tentative list for the UNESCO World Heritage List. The area of the Majuli Island has decreased by 39.3 square kilometers over a period of 12 years. And yes, the erosion is particularly pronounced in this stretch of the Majuli-Jorhat bank. And it continues for about 50 kilometers till Kumargao. During the period of 1914 to 1998, there was a total loss of 49.5 square kilometers of land in this area. Again, the Brahmaputra Valley is also a highly sensitive seismic zone. Two major earthquakes in the valley took place in 1897 and 1950, respectively. The Bor Bhuikop, or Great Earthquake of 1950, which measured 8.7 magnitude in the Richter scale. This caused major damage to the drainage system and significantly altered its topography. The erosion and migration activities of the Brahmaputra are believed to have intensified following this major earthquake. Now, migration is one of the many issues that policymakers will have to face when addressing climate change. Climate change has made catastrophic physical and socio-economic repercussions for the human existence universally and have emerged as the single most significant global socio-political and environmental concern. Victims of forced migration caused by environmental disaster or natural disasters is termed as environmental refugee, climate refugee, or disaster displaced person, or climate migrants, or even environmental migrants. From 2008 through to 2014, around 157 million people were displaced across the world as a result of weather-related events. Based on a joint report by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and the Norwegian Refugee Council some years ago, it is estimated that over 36 million people had been displaced in 2008 by sudden onset disasters, with around 20 million of these, which is 56%, victims of events related to climate change. Moreover, while attention often focuses on specific regions such as the Pacific Islands or Africa, the most devastating climate events in 2008 were spread across the globe, including the Philippines, China, India, Myanmar, the US, and Cuba. South Asian countries with their fragile environment and underdeveloped economic and social conditions are particularly vulnerable to the consequences of climate change. For the South Asian countries, climate change will result in colossal economic, social, and environmental damage and threaten the very existence of the society, compromising the growth potential and poverty reduction efforts. The area is highly prone to the consequences caused due to climate change and is identified to be one of the hotspots of the most disaster-prone area in the world. Climate-related risks threaten the quality of life, inter alia health, education, food security, and the overall well-being throughout South Asia. Now, owing to continuous land erosion along the Brahmaputra and its tributaries, particularly since the 1950s, Assam has lost 12.6 1,000 hectares of land already, which has displaced 77.8 thousand people till 2014. This is according to our Government of Assam report. And the Brahmaputra, the Brahmaputra River has wiped out more than 4,000 square kilometers of land and displaced more than 25,000 villagers between the period 1960 to 2008. Till 1985, Assam had lost about 7.4% of its total area due to riverbank erosion, leading to the displacement of 5,000 people. And it is during this period that the narrative of the novel Moria Hula is set. The novel is a poignant and foreboding tale of one of the many disasters faced by an ecologically sensitive region since the last century, precisely since the beginning of the proposed epoch of the Anthropocene. The novel undertakes a mnemonic recounting of the entire history of the Moria Hula area, as the narrators, who are a set of locals, relate the momentous episodes and landmarks in its glorious history since its founding. The history of Moria Hula begins with the rule of the Ahom king Sohummo, who reigned between 1497 and 1539, and the invasion by Turbak Khan. He was a Gaur commander who invaded Assam during his reign, and this invasion was successfully thwarted by the Ahom king. During this invasion, 900 Moria soldiers of the bell metal working community were captured by the Ahom army. The prisoners were allowed to settle in the Namdoyang area of the current Golaghat district, and they were engaged in rice cultivation. The Mauryas, who had no prior experience of rice cultivation at all, started digging up fertile silty clay from an abandoned channel of the Brahmaputra and dumping it in the agricultural fields. They received a decent harvest, and the area where they undertook digging developed a basin which they began to inhabit. Several villages developed in the area with time, and the whole area came to be known as Moria Hula, literally basin of the Moria. The founding of the human colony itself is thus linked to a significant episode in the history of Assam and the unique topography of the area, and begins with a story of anthropogenic alterations made to its ecosphere. Throughout the narrative, the Moria Hula's crucial connection to episodes of historical importance are thus iterated. The colony was adjacent to the Kuruabahi area, which was the site of one of the major Assamese Vaishnavite monasteries. Founded in the 16th to 17th centuries, the Vaishnavite monasteries, or Hotras, are the spiritual and cultural centers of the new Vaishnavite tradition of Assam. Hundreds of these institutions are found across Assam, although 4 Hotras, Auniati, Gormor, Dokhinpat, and Kuruabahi, received patronage of Ahom kings and became the most influential. Kuruabahi is located on the southern bank of the Brahmaputra in the current Golaghat district, and it is quite close to the Moria Hula, the erstwhile Moria Hula area. And the other 3 are located on the Majuli River Island. All 4 Hotras continue to exert crucial socio-religious influence in Assam and are revered as invariable repositories of both tangible and intangible cultural material. Yet erosion has continued to pose a serious threat to the existence of all 4 historical institutions. The Kuruabahi Hotra, which was central to the social and spiritual life of the entire area along the Brahmaputra, of which Moria Hula was also a part, has been forced to relocate several times due to land erosion at its site. The struggles of the Hotra with repeated erosion of its land becomes a prototype and a symbol of other settlements along the mighty river in the entire area. However, the narrative, somewhat inadvertently, also recounts the ecological changes brought about through human needs of cultivation and inhabitation, which are symptomatic of the massive anthropogenic alterations of the ecosystem and climate in the eco-sensitive Northeast region. A pertinent instance in this regard is the founding of the Kuruabahi Hotra itself, which was named after the large colony of Pallas fish eagle or band-tailed fish eagle, locally known as Kurua birds, that was observed at the site, which was selected for establishing the institution. While the institution in the entire neighboring area has retained its name, which originated with the Kurua habitat, the colony itself has disappeared and the bird has become rare after the Hotra was established, and today it features in the endangered list of the IUCN Red List. The loss of this bird species is also a reminder of the colonial history of the region. for the rapid increase of the highly invasive water hyacinth plant introduced during British colonial rule have caused serious environmental and socio-economic impacts in the floodplain wetlands of Assam, which are known to have a very high level of ecological benefits, including reducing carbon levels, preventing flood damage, providing a home and food resources for a variety of threatened plants and animals, preserving groundwater storage, and naturally cleaning sewage. The abundant growth of water hyacinth, a colonial import, which is today considered one of the worst aquatic weeds worldwide, is also a significant cause of biodiversity loss in the Assam Valley, including that of bird species such as the kurua or the Pallas fish eagle that I had just described. While the erosion of the Brahmaputra riverbank is attributed to geological consequences of seismic activities in the eastern Himalayan subregion, the impact of the human geography on its ecology, climate, and physiography remain largely uninvestigated. As the village community in Moria Hula struggle against the increasing erosion activities on the riverbank, they are faced with the challenge of dealing with an apathetic, corrupt modern governance system, which is completely unable to or unwilling to address the ecological and human problems of the area. Development also forms an important discourse throughout the novel, and the efforts of the local community and enterprising individuals who appear as important characters in the plot is recounted throughout the narrative in guiding the village community into modernity and progress. Although the writer claims that his is not a historical novel, in fact, it is the encouragement and assistance of many local figures associated with the history and struggles of Moria Hula that led to the fictional recording of its story in Jointa Madhav Bora's book. The serious ecological harm caused in the area through the environmental insensitivity with which many infrastructure development activities throughout Assam have been undertaken is also highlighted during the course of the narrative. One instance is the construction of the National Highway number 37, which runs through the length of the state and forms the lifeline of road communication across most districts of Western Assam and the southern bank of the Brahmaputra. But the fact that a huge number of trees were promptly cut down and many forest areas indiscriminately cleared away during its construction, leading to habitat loss of many species, as well as far-reaching unalterable consequences on the ecology of the entire valley, is lamented by the narrators in the novel. Besides the developmental narrative, the volatile political trajectory of the people of Assam in the second half of the 20th century, which is the time period that the narrative is set in, becomes entangled with the environmental and socio-cultural struggles of the people of Moria Hula. Erosion of the riverine lands along the Brahmaputra and the Dhansiri that intensified from the 1960s led to the submerging of the entirety or significant parts of Hugduar, Dhankhirimukh, Bilotia, Bamungao, Fawala, Digholi Ati, Jugoni Ati, Bihia, Sarugao, Morolia, Porongonia, and Kuruavahi villages of Moria Hula. Around 5,000 people lost their agricultural lands and homesteads forever. Beginning with 1968, the people of the Kuruavahi area began a protest movement demanding relief, rehabilitation, and protection of their lands against erosion, which is fictionalized in the novel. The movement became intense in 1983, and Moria Hula became a symbol of the protest movement for the rights of disaster victims all over the state, raising important questions regarding humanitarian assistance and protection, human rights, migration management, refugee protection, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and development, and also environmental justice. The most likely event in the Anthropocene epoch, if we continue to live as we do now, is the extinction of the human race. The epoch of the Anthropocene forces us to confront what Thakur calls, I quote, the world without us, unquote. The struggle for bare survival of the population of the Moria Hula area, captured in Bora's novel, forebodes the future human cause of ecological changes in the Anthropocene. Moria Hula does not try to present its characters as helpless victims of their history and their environment. Instead, the story of Moria Hula is that of a community's efforts to actively launch a spontaneous people's movement for their rights and survival, in spite of various forces that threaten to disrupt their coordination and harmony as a community. Yet, one of the concerns at the heart of the Anthropocene is the widespread sense of loss of agency. The main obstacle to taking action on climate change is a deep sense of its inevitability and our powerlessness to affect its course. The struggles of the characters against the might of nature combined with socio-political problems intrinsic to the very society of humans, which end in their eventual inability to save Moria Hula, can be read as a statement upon the same. The novel Moria Hula is undoubtedly an important document that explores the relationship between literature and the Anthropocene. It may not qualify as a work of cli-fi according to the current definitions of the genre. However, as an emerging field of creativity and scholarship, the definitions of the term will hopefully expand to accommodate works like Moria Hula in order to highlight the very real need of attention to local tales of disasters and environmental issues in highly vulnerable regions of the developing world, such as the Brahmaputra Valley. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. I hope I did not finish too early.
That's okay. Yeah. The floor is now open for questions and comments. Participants, you can write in the chat box or you can directly also ask to Dr. Rajashree. Actually, Dr. Rajashree, I have one question as well. Thank you for such a nice presentation. And, you know, I was really impressed about the way you have explained Brahmaputra River and, you know, its course actually from Tibet to how it enters, you know, India through creating a gorge and then also in Bangladesh, like near Dhubri. That was really impressive because as I'm coming from geography background, I was really impressed by the detail you have given regarding the course of Brahmaputra. And I have one question. You talked about, you know, climate change adaptation. This novel is actually, it is the cli-fi literature. So is there any kind of, you know, adaptation strategies the writer has mentioned in the entire book regarding, you know, climate change? You mostly talked about, you know, riverbank erosion, like that is the main cause of, you know, climate change or geomorphological changes happening in this region. But are there any temperature related or rainfall related changes in Assam Valley or in that particular area?
Definitely. I think temperature change is also a very real event, even in the Northeast or in the Assam Valley. But although this is not something that has been directly talked about by the author, his intentions are not really to talk about the environmental changes, but he is mainly trying to narrate the struggles of one community, which he takes as a symbol or as representative of the struggles being faced by similar communities all over Assam, because erosion is a problem not only along the Brahmaputra, but along most of its tributaries. But then while doing that, he also draws attention to many environmental factors, many environmental reasons, and other social-political struggles which become connected with the environmental struggles of these people. But I think temperature change and decrease in rainfall, these are not issues that have been directly dealt with in this novel.
Okay, and also any kind of adaptation strategies, you know, people are employing any kind of adaptation strategies in this community against coastal erosion? Are there some kind of, you know, adaptation?
Yes, definitely, because the Brahmaputra is a very mighty river, and the people, they try on their own to build embankments, and they also relocate to various areas, and also because they do not receive any kind of support and any kind of relief from the government, from the authorities at all. They launched this movement, of course, which also becomes connected with other political movements of that time. But then they also try to provide relief and help each other on a community basis. There are many clubs and there are many historical personages from that area who were very active in trying to provide support to the flood affected and erosion affected families, and those characters have been fictionalized. Those people have been presented as fictional characters in the novel, so at least it's based upon those personages. And some of those figures, they have also inspired the writing of the novel to commemorate the loss of Moria Hula. So as a community, they did try to come up with various adapting strategies in order to cope with the disaster.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Rajashree. Are there any more questions, participants? You can write in the chat box. We can take some questions. or any point you want to address regarding today's, lecture, you can also come forward.
So are the participants mainly from VIT-AP? I can't see the participants at all.
I know, I think the participants are all over, India. And we have not only just VIT-AP.
Hello, can I ask you something? My name is Meha.
Yeah, sure.
I'm from Kerala.
Yes, Meha.
Okay, though ma'am mentioned the term Anthropocene, and I had a doubt regarding the term Anthropocene. Anthropocene is a term which whole human being is responsible for the kind of changes that's happening all around the universe. And my doubt is that how can you consider human beings as a homogeneizing acting unit?
Yes, your concern is very right, very valid. And there are many other critics, many other scholars as well who have raised similar questions. And they have, I did mention that very briefly, they do have problems, they do have objections to the use of the term Anthropocene because they do not, that kind of homogenizes the entire idea of humans. And they also find it to be very, very anthropomorphic, very human-centered. And that is why there are so many alternative names that have been selected, that have been offered by various scholars, even by many scientists. I did mention some of the terms. One term that kind of addresses this homogenizing effect of the term Anthropocene is the Oliganthropocene, which draws attention to the fact that not all human groups in the world are equal. It kind of highlights the diversity within the human species. There is also another term, homogenocene, which kind of directly addresses the question of homogenizing, which can be found in the term Anthropocene. Also another term, Clothocene, which kind of again reminds of a more post-human need to also give space to the idea of not just humans, but also of non-human animals as agents, as equal members of this natural community, which has some kind of participation in this era, in this epoch, as much as humans do. So these are alternative terms that have also been offered. So Anthropocene, the term Anthropocene.
Thank you. Very well explained. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Participants, we still have time, so you can ask questions, or if you have any comments or thoughts, you can share with us. I have one more question regarding the community Moria Hola. Is it a particular like tribal community or indigenous people, or can you give some demographic background of that? And that is one question. And also I was trying to understand their economy. Like, is it like agricultural economy, like agrarian economy, rural agrarian economy? And what like livelihoods, if you can talk about their livelihoods as per the novel, or in general also, if you can talk about that area and people's
that is a very interesting question, I think. Yes, demographically speaking, the villagers, the people that are represented here in the novel as characters, they are mostly people who belong to the Assamese community. Their mother tongue is Assamese, but then they also have many neighboring villages which have tribal communities, and also people of other religious communities as well. So the characters in this novel, they are mainly Assamese Hindus, mainly caste Hindus, and they are also surrounded by other villages which belong to non-caste Hindu Assamese groups, and also there's also Muslim villages. In fact, very interestingly, the origin of the Moria Hula area that owes to a group of Muslim soldiers who were prisoners of war when the attack by the Gore general happened, and they stayed back and they intermarried with local women, and then they began this entire settlement which developed into these many villages, and no trace was left of that Muslim ancestry at all. So they completely assimilated with the local culture, and there are hardly any Muslim settlements in the close vicinity of the Moria Hula area, although there are other Muslim habitations all around. And there are many prominent figures from the area who are presented as characters in the novel who have a very active participation in the social and political concerns, social political struggles of the people here. And they are also very, very culturally active. And some of them are very recognizable characters who happen to be very prominent figures in the history, in the cultural history of Assam in general. So all kinds of it gives space to a kind of communal diversity. There are references to many other neighboring villages which have tribal settlements, although they are not part of the main group of characters as such. And coming to the question of livelihood, yes, they are mainly a rural agricultural population. So they are an agrarian population. So mainly they survive with the help of cultivation. This is why the loss of cultivable lands becomes a very serious issue, because it also leads to poverty trap. And many of the characters, many of the families, in fact, they are depicted as facing, when the novel starts, when the narrative itself begins, they are depicted to be struggling with financial hardships. And that is because this was not their condition 1 generation or 2 generation back. And they started losing a lot of agricultural land. And because of that, they started, facing gradual poverty and gradual hardships. So that also kind of forms the backdrop. And, that is also referred to at various points in the novel.
From which year you think that erosion started increasing in this area, or in general, Brahmaputra Valley, changes its courses, like it is renowned for flooding. So from exactly, there is a time period, like from where the intensity of flooding, started, like 1950s, 60s. Is there any time frame of that?
In Moria Hula, particularly, the erosion, it's supposed to have been, it's stated to have been intensified since 1968, which is after the great earthquake of 1950, like I mentioned. So that was a major earthquake. And the epicenter was somewhere in the foothills. It was not really in the Assam Valley. It was in the foothills of the Himalayas, which is now along the border, Assam Arunachal border. So the epicenter was over there, but it made such major changes to topography and to the geology of the region that its impacts are still felt. And many of the rivers, they changed their courses. Many rivers were dammed by the sediment that was deposited as a result of the earthquake, and they remained dammed for a long time. And then after those dams were removed and the river course was cleared, they changed their courses. So since that time, the entire topography of the area has been very, very unstable. So the erosion itself, it is believed to have intensified post this earthquake. And in Moria Hula, it began very critical since 1960s. 1968 is exactly the year that is mentioned in the novel as the beginning of the erosion problem in a very critical manner for the people. And then it continues, and by the late 1980s, Moria Hula, as such, now it lies in the middle of the Brahmaputra.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for explaining in detail. Are there any more questions from the participants? There is one comment in the chat box. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. It was truly insightful. However, I would like to know the stance of the government or the state on climate refugees. The question is from Metin Jacob.
Yeah, this is a very important aspect of the narrative itself, because initially, at least, no relief, no support, no concern at all was shown by the authorities concerned. Although Assam has many special boards which are dedicated to deal with these issues. Just a moment, please. I lost the. Yes. In spite of many boards which were formed and which were in existence while the erosion problem started for the people in this area, and these were approached in a formal manner by the villagers, by the victims, no empathy, no real empathy at least was shown. So much, there is a lot of funding which does come in, and these are also mentioned in the course of the novel. A lot of funds are spent, but they were not able to prevent, they were not effective in preventing erosion, and Moria Hula ultimately that was completely lost. So the response of the state was, to put it simply, I think inadequate. That's the term that I would like to use.
Ma'am, just a thought regarding this in this connection regarding you talking about funding. Are there only national or state funding, like, or are there international like groups working in this area? Like, is there any external funding coming, like from like international, donor agency or international, institutions? Are there international involvement in this area, or is it just only the state and local, government kind of?
The period that is described in the novel, during this period, I do not think there was any kind of international assistance that was available, at least none that has been mentioned in the novel as such. But currently there might be some level of international funding to deal with erosion problem in the Brahmaputra, because like I had mentioned, two particular sites, which one of them is in the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the other is also in a tentative list. And these areas, obviously, to protect these areas from erosion, from land loss, there are many. They do receive that kind of international attention, and funding is available. So through that funding channel, there might be, they will have to not just address the erosion in one particular area, the entire problem of erosion along the Brahmaputra will have to be addressed. So some amount of intervention in that manner might be available. At present, I do not have very exact data, very detailed data. But then as far as the particular period which is being depicted in the novel, which ends, the narrative ends somewhere in the late 1980s. During this period, at least, I do not think any kind of international assistance or even international consciousness, international awareness regarding the disasters being faced in the area were available at all. So most of the funding is, it's either, most of the funding is, it is national. It comes, that comes from the federal government and not from the state government.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I don't see any more questions. Participants, we can take one more question and then we can, I think, conclude the session. I will wait few minutes. If you have any more question, you can ask Dr. Radhasree. I don't think any more questions are coming. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such a wonderful and insightful, and engaging, talk. And I thank our assistant, Associate Dean, Dr. Thaya Afzal, for supporting us and to organize, for her constant support and encouragement to organize this seminar. I also thank our IT department for their technical support. And I thank all the participants across India for joining today. Thank you all. We will meet again tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have another session from 3 to 4 p.m. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you to your institution for giving me this wonderful opportunity to participate in a very interesting seminar, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm ending this session, formally ending this session. Thank you. Bye.